what's happening now, especially with the market being the way it is, succession planning is becoming more popular as well because people realize if you have your key strategic employees or leaders, and if one of them leaves the organization, that's extremely impactful to the organization. It's really expensive to replace. You're panic mode. You're trying to be reactive. So instead, you build a talent pool and pipeline and make sure you're ahead of that.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Kuehnle, and welcome to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make the change. Today, we have an incredible Q&A episode ahead of us, but before we get into that, just want to tell you a little bit about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show. Sometimes we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space, and they're going to teach you how to do something that's helped them be successful in their roles. Other days, we cover trending topics, items that recruiters are talking about or will be very soon, what those mean for them. Every Tuesday, stop by. We have Tactical Tuesday episodes where we go deep on how to do something that will help you drive better results in your day-to-day that you could start on right away. Sometimes, like today, we open it up for Q&A. Listeners drop in questions to us that they'd like to hear us take on, so send those over to us at podcast@loxo.co. And every now and then, you'll hear a mic drop episode from Matt as he shares something that's been bouncing around in his head about the recruitment space and wants to share with everyone. So getting into today's Q&A, I have Matt joining me, and I personally think this one's going to be fascinating to hear your responses to. So to tee this one up, we received a multiple question submission from an individual who works in-house on an exec search team. In-house, it's at a Fortune 500 company. When I think of Fortune 500 companies, I often think of super buttoned up organizations that have processes, plans, tools, resources galore, all of the things. But as we'll find out in this conversation, that's not always the case. So some of the questions that we're going to be going over today will include things like succession planning and proactive talent pipelining, the best tools for in-house exec search teams, and how to plan key hires around where the business will be in a few years. So to jump right into that, Matt, want to give you a little bit of the background. Essentially, it's what was shared with us. So received the email. It says, I recently joined an internal executive search team at a Fortune 500 company after a number of years at Korn Ferry. I don't want to be the new person who comes in and wants to change everything, but I can already tell that we're behind the 8 ball with the current setup and expectations. I see that you work with executive search and in-house recruiters, so I'm hoping you could give me some advice on what I should do. Hopefully, you don't mind me asking a few questions here. Thanks in advance. So question 1, coming from Korn Ferry, I'm used to having the resources, the tools, the people needed for important executive searches. Right now, we have an ATS, an HRIS, and a lot of manual work in between. Is there even a tool out there that can help a small team like the one that I've joined?
That's a great question. And it's actually something that we get quite a bit, but it's not always necessarily the question that we get. It's more when we're asking prospective, uh, you know, partners how they're doing things today, and particularly the in-house. So I'll take a step back just to help set the stage for why this is happening. But the evolution of recruitment software, in particular, for in-house, is everyone has an ATS. And the reason why is in the late 90s, the advent of job boards exploded. So you had to have a system of record to handle the inbound applicants. And so most of all, especially internal in-house TA and talent acquisition, even for agencies, it's all built around post and pray, essentially, right? That's not recruitment. It's all inbound applicants. Those are their systems of record. And so what's happening now is more and more sophisticated recruiting organizations, and the ones that are bringing it are trying to bring it in-house. They don't have the right tools. They all use their HRIS, or some of them call it an ATS, but they don't use it for recruitment. Everyone uses LinkedIn, of course, if you're doing passive outreach, right? But it's not the proper tool, and their ATS or HCM doesn't offer the capabilities that they need. So that's why the questions are starting to surface a lot, and people come and ask. And in-house are trying to recruit more like executive search. They just don't have the tools. They use Excel or LinkedIn. That's it. They do not have, rarely they'll have a executive search ATS, but that's like an old system. It doesn't really do a lot of the stuff they really need.
So if the HRIS isn't solving for what they need, like you said, they're using Excel sheets. Are they trying? what's the gap that's missing essentially? Like, what are they not able to accomplish that they should be able to if they were, at a proper firm, or if they were at Corn Ferry?
Yeah. So, and this is really important. So, and I'll share a lot of names and different tools. I think it's important, but uh, name your favorite flavor of ATS. There's the favorite question that recruiters have, but most of them can't stand it, right? And the reason why is it doesn't help them do their job. It's clunky. It's really hard. It's a ton of manual data entry. When we talk about the recruiting profession and where recruiters take the most pride, especially executive search, you spend a lot of time building a talent pool or pipeline. ATSs were built again to post a job and you just get inbound anyone who's looking for a job. And so all of the tools, and in modern, more recent times, tools are called a recruiting CRM, are trying to solve this problem. And what they're doing though is they have the same fatal flaws that an ATS does. They were designed to manage more inbound applicants, right? And so Avature, in my personal opinion, Avature is the only other enterprise grade recruiting CRM in the market besides Loxo. And it's a really good, phenomenal company. Check out Avature if you're not familiar with it. If you are an internal in-house, that's built for in-house only. But if you're internal in-house giant enterprise and you do not have a recruiting CRM, you should check that out. It's a very large, proper recruiting CRM. However, the difference, we'll talk about Loxo and how some things are different, is, Loxo is much more modern, but it's more, the difference is that Avature is more built for, again, recruitment marketing, traditional recruitment marketing, which is how do we build our brand and attract more applicants, inbound applicants. There's a lot of energy and stuff that goes into inbound. Loxo is different. Loxo is a recruiting CRM. Well, part of the platform has a enterprise grade recruiting CRM in it. But what executive search within in-house companies are looking for in traditional executive search on the agency side is they need a platform that allows them to, one, manage their entire activities end to end, but primarily build workflows and talent pools. And it's not on a job by job basis, but you're being proactive and strategic and building, either succession planning or building talent pools. It's much more proactive.
Okay. And that that perfectly ties into the second question they were asking. I swear I didn't tee you up for this. A big part of what we do revolves around succession planning and proactive talent pipelining. Do you have any tips or recommendations for how we can be more effective with this?
Yeah, so succession planning is becoming a much more prominent. Succession planning is much more prominent now than it used to be, at least from our experience. And the reason why is a lot of enterprise organizations are being more strategic, and talent pipelining. I mean, executive search and recruiting agencies will laugh because they've been doing that forever. The very best talent acquisition leaders in enterprise are strategic, and they have been building talent pools and pipelines forever. But again, they didn't really have the tools to do it. So it was a mess. It was in Excel. It was all over the place. Um, what's happening now, especially with the market being the way it is, succession planning is becoming more popular as well, because people realize if you have your key strategic employees or leaders, and if one of them leaves the organization, that's extremely impactful to the organization. It's really expensive to replace. You're panic mode. You're trying to be reactive. So instead, you build a talent pool and pipeline and make sure you're ahead of that. So a lot of the top, search organizations have been offering these services for a while. A lot of executive search firms, even RPO, are doing a flavor of that, but they could do it for mid-level roles, director level roles or higher. But really, that's the way to be proactive and strategic. Is most companies, if you're, search firms do it all day long, and you should, on behalf of your clients. But enterprise organizations at all, if you are not already building talent pools and pipelines for each one of your core roles, whether it's evergreen roles or leadership roles, you have to. And some of this stuff is important too, for visibility and sensitivity to people even seeing it, right? So you have to have executive search teams building these and owning it.
So hopefully this isn't a controversial question, but when you are doing this succession planning, are you doing it when you know that a key member of an executive leadership team will be departing in 6, 12, 24 months? Are you doing it to have a backup plan, a bench, so to speak, for it? Like how should they be thinking
Yeah.
about it and doing that?
Yeah, a good question. I think in a perfect world, of course, right? Every senior leader would say, "Hey, I'm coming up to retirement. Heads up." Uh, in the real world, a lot of people don't notify their employer, right? Hey, 2 weeks, like surprise, surprise. So that's really why succession planning is it's prudent, right? You have to. It's one of the most fundamental parts of having redundancy and just systems in place, and but also evergreen roles that are high volume, even on the low end for call centers. I mean, it doesn't have to be super strategic roles. Succession planning is critical in different industries. That's even more important, right? It just takes a lot of effort and energy and systems in the past to do it, but now you can do it really easily, and it's just part of the process and workflow. But um, yeah, but hopefully that.
Yeah, no, that helps. Hopefully that was kind of my curiosity at that point. And so to build off of that last question, when you do have, especially whether it's a Fortune 500 company, a company that's been around for a long time, you usually have they're a company that's known well for something. So in this instance, they said that our business is growing and evolving from what most people currently know us for. And so as we're doing that succession planning, we recognize that the leadership profile needs to fit where we want to be, not just where we're at right now. So say, they wanted to break into a new industry, a new niche, they have a new product, something like that coming out. Like, what's the best way for them to be more proactive in pipelining those roles, not just from the search sourcing part of it, but also from the conversations that I might be having with some of those prospective candidates?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. This is just my opinion from having close to 10,000 conversations over the years. It's just observing how things are done and what people are doing and methodologies, and I'm fascinated by learning and understanding best practices, and that's why a lot of the listeners here are here today as well. So I'll just share what we've heard, but in my opinion, the it's just the growth mindset, right? The very best people are constantly trying new things and trying to understand how you can get more efficient, more strategic, and just deliver higher quality of hire. So a lot of the traditional KPIs, time to fill, cost of hire, things like that. How can you drive those down? But when it comes down to it, um, when you're looking at moving into potential, like a lot of organizations essentially are realizing every business uh, is becoming a technology company, every organization. And I know for a fact, because I've had conversations recently with a handful of very old traditional uh, companies in consumer packaged goods or warehousing, you name it. And essentially, they're doing succession planning. They're looking at it and working in concert with very high end strategic executive search firms to build these out. And it's so critical. But the reason why they're spinning up talent intelligence teams and internal in-house executive search is because the entire organization now is preparing to transition from the old world to the new world. And so this is happening. It's happening with technology. It's happening with organizations, and the market is dictating the old ways of doing things are not going to work anymore. And some people will stick their head in the sand. That's why I don't know what the data says, but like 70% of Fortune 500 companies from 20 years ago are no longer around, right? And so the smart organizations are getting ahead of it, and you do that through people. It's not always your business model. Business model will transition, but a lot of them now are hiring people in AI or and big data. Some of these companies now that are traditional are suddenly these data companies. Data CPG companies are selling like data or cyber infosec. People would laugh at that, but it's happening. And so the type of profile and leadership profile and experience is very different than what they have traditionally in the company that's been working there and climbing the ladder for a long time, right? They don't have the experience internally, so they have to go out and build these pipelines. And part of that, my favorite part of building talent pools and pipelines, is essentially mapping the entire market, understanding and comparing and contrasting. Uh, what does good look like? What does the proper profile look like? What type of skill sets are we looking for? What are the capabilities and skills within the marketplace, and where does it look like that direction is going? So there's a lot of really insightful things that you can gather just from doing this in general. Not just, you not necessarily even have to hire somebody. It's just more research and strategic talent intelligence.
Yeah, that's interesting because you think of so many big companies as they want the person that already has the 20 years of experience within this industry or that, but they have to have, like you said, that combination of the growth mindset. And it also shows that if the company recognizes that they need to do something different than before, they might not be as married to that concept of, well, you only have to have worked in the industry that we've been for forever, but we don't know what we don't know. That's why we want someone to help us on that journey. So uh love that. Love that. So it always comes back to it. Well, that wraps the three questions that came in from this part on all things, in-house exec search, succession planning, everything else. So as always, appreciate the time with you coming on to answer these. It's always interesting when we get to go a little bit more like into these niche parts of recruitment and the different people and the use cases and everything. But what I do like is you can apply them often to whether or not you are an in-house exec search. They're saying like succession planning is going to be something that you should probably be thinking about, or a value add that you can provide to some of your customers if you are, an agency or an individual. So I always take something away from this. I know that listeners will do as well. So everyone, that's the show. That was a great Q&A with Matt. Until next time.